All right, so let's dive in. Well, super great to have so much interest in this topic. I just kind of marketed this for a few days and had about over 50 people register. So I just feel like these topics are so relevant right now. I mean, women's health in general is really being talked about so much more, which is amazing. And obviously it needs more funding and more research, but I do feel like we're starting to head in a good direction, and women are being more speaking out more about their needs to really get fair health care and really understand our issues as women, especially as we age. So there's a lot more education and talk about excuse me, hormone replacement therapy, or now it's being called menopause hormone therapy, because it's not technically replacing your hormones, but it's helping to give you more hormones of what we lose through menopause. Most of that is around estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone, but nobody talks about human growth hormone. And I think that's super interesting because as we dive into human growth hormone, you'll learn what a super important hormone this is and what happens to it as we age. So, first of all, human growth hormone is often referred to as our master hormone and or our longevity hormone. And the reason it's referred this way is human growth hormone is involved in many, many processes in our body. If you think about the name, human growth hormone, it does exactly what it sounds like. It's involved. We have a ton of it as we're growing up. It kind of peaks around puberty or kind of that age range, teens and maybe early 20s, because that's when we're growing the most. Our bones, our muscle, all of our tissue, human growth hormone is essential for growth. As we age, we lose some human growth hormone, and we end up starting to drastically lose it by around midlife. What human growth hormone does for us as we're adults, after we finished growing, after our youth years, it supports a healthy metabolism. So, like you hear about, insulin resistance or blood sugar levels or prediabetes, all that stuff start to happen as we age. Human growth hormone is a big player in helping to regulate our metabolism. It helps to maintain our muscle and bone. As women in midlife, we hear about this a ton, how maintaining muscle and maintaining bone density becomes harder and harder as we age. And hormone replacement therapy is one tool that can help with this. But human growth hormone is another tool, and in some ways, maybe a more effective tool to manage muscle and bone. Human growth hormone helps with our energy, our stamina, our physical performance, and even our mental clarity. So it really helps us perform at a better level overall. So I'm going to share my screen for just a couple slides. Let me see if I can do this. So human growth hormone, I just want to kind of touch on these 2 points. By the time a woman is 50 years old, human growth hormone production is down by 80% from what it was produced in early adulthood. So huge. And by one decade later, by 60, you're barely producing any human growth hormone naturally at all. Here's a graph. This is of humans, not just women. It was very hard. So speaking of the question of how much research has been done on women, I couldn't even find a graph that was specifically for women on human growth hormone. But this shows you men and women, they both, you see over on the left, that's a 20-year-old, their human growth hormone is very high and it steadily declines. And you see at 50, it's pretty low, but by 60, 70, and 80, it's just barely there, right? And this is for women and men. I suspect if we saw a women's graph, we would see a more, it's already declining pretty steeply, but the 40 to 50 graph would probably be a little steeper, because the thing about human growth hormone, it is linked to estrogen. A lot, hormones are very complex. They're all interrelated. So one hormone might lower and then another one raise. They have a cause and effect that we still are trying to figure out in science, like how they all work together. But they do know that estradiol and human growth hormone are related. And when estradiol goes down in women, human growth hormone goes down in parallel with it. So in menopause, we get a drastic reduction of human growth hormone. Or of estrogen. We also get a drastic reduction of human growth hormone. Um, Here's what low human growth hormone looks like: higher level body fat, especially around the waist. How many people have heard of that as a symptom of menopause, right? Loss of lean muscle or lean body mass. How many have heard that a symptom of menopause, right? It's the same with bone density, fatigue and lack of energy, anxiety and depression, and even decreased sexual function and interest. These are all symptoms that are broadly talked about as a menopausal symptom, but nobody's talking about human growth hormone's role in this equation, and this is specifically a list of what low human growth hormone results in. So it's exactly what menopausal symptoms are. If we can work on human growth hormone, we can improve all of these symptoms. So if human growth hormone is so important, if it controls so many things, if I just showed you all the things it does that's related to menopause, and everyone's talking about menopause, but why isn't anyone talking about human growth hormone? Well, the fact of the matter is replacement for human growth hormone is tricky. It's not legal in the US to do human growth hormone just for anti-aging purposes. It's only legal if you have a specified condition of low human growth hormone that's been diagnosed. It can't be just given as anti-aging. Even if you can find a workaround for that, there's risks. There's dosage risks, and it's an injection. There's injection risks. If you take too much human growth hormone that's synthetic, it can increase different risks, but risk of cancer if it's a synthetic hormone, as well as potentially some changes in bone structure if it's too high. But obviously, if your body's producing it naturally, those risks are not the same. That's only if it's synthetic. So it's not approved for anti-aging. It's risky, and it's also expensive. It's like $1,200 a month is one quote I just saw on the online to do human growth hormone therapy. So it's really not a mainstream solution, and so that's why it's not really being talked about, because doctors aren't going to talk about things if there's not really a solution for them. Kind of as a caveat, but I just wanted to make this point. There's an article that just came out by the New York Times that said no one told me this would happen to my body in my 40s. And what it's talking about is in our 40s, they've kind of found through science that in mid 40s, there's a kind of dramatic aging acceleration shift. And most healthcare providers aren't really talking about this, but we talk about it in terms of menopause and a lot of the changes, but not so much in the decline in strength and increased injury, even among very active people at this stage in life. And so one of the reasons why this is happening in the 40s is that decrease in human growth hormone. The American Heart Association is now specifically recommending strength training for cardiovascular health and overall health at just 2 times a week, but 72% of people are not getting in that guideline. So my point in that is that there is a dramatic shift in our 40s and 50s around all of our hormones. I'm not trying to say it's just human growth hormone, but human growth hormone is a big player. And the solution is exercise. That's the only really significant way we can produce human growth hormone naturally as we age. But 72% of people aren't doing the strength training they need to be doing anyway. But also, if you look at exercise, human growth hormone is triggered through exercise with high intensity interval training. So, high intensity interval training is heavy lifting, sprints, or high intensity intervals, right? So, problem with that is not only are some people that's hard to do if women haven't been lifting, they're not familiar with how to lift heavy, but as we age, these activities become harder and harder, if not impossible to do. So my personal story, I was I've been a trainer my whole career. I was an elite athlete. I'm familiar with lifting heavy and working hard, but I had a hip injury. I had a hip replacement. I could no longer lift heavy. I could no longer work out at the intensity I used to. And I significantly lost muscle mass throughout my 40s. So I kind of experienced firsthand this problems. Like we should be working out hard, even if we're the top percent of people who are willing to do it. Most people aren't doing it, but if you're the ones that are willing to do it, it's still very hard to achieve the type of exercise to produce the human growth hormone we need. So that's where kind of BFR comes in. And most of you know that I have been doing blood flow restriction training for the last year and a half or so, and have become a really big believer in this technique. Not just, well, partly the science is really strong on it, and I'll share some of the science here. And also, I've been doing it myself, and now with over 100 women through my program, and the results we're seeing really mimic the results of increased human growth hormone. So with BFR, there is research that suggests that the research that they've done shows that high intensity training and blood flow restriction training get similar results in human growth hormone And or there's some studies that really show that blood flow restricting trainers will get you a greater human growth hormone response than even high intensity training. And that's been my personal experience. I feel like I'm getting a much greater response, and a lot of my clients doing BFR than even my clients who were doing high intensity training prior to doing BFR. So, studies have been proving, lots of studies showing strength gains with BFR under low loads. Actually, interestingly enough, blood flow restriction training became popular with physical therapy. That's kind of where it lived. It's been around for 50 years, even though it sounds like this new concept. It's been around for a long time. It just was more in a clinical setting where you needed supervision, and people would do it for rehab purposes. Because let's say, for example, you had a knee replacement, and you couldn't load your knee because the joint wasn't healed enough yet. You don't want to put load on it, but you don't want to just have your leg atrophy. That wouldn't be good either. So they would use blood flow restriction with very light loads, and they would get great responses in muscle gain without stressing the joint. And now people are realizing that's not just a good idea when you're in rehab, but as we age, if we can maintain or gain more strength under lower loads where we're not stressing our joints, and causing inflammation in our body, then that is a great trade-off. Not only is it less stress in our body, but we're able to get strength gains and these human growth hormone gains that are affecting all the cells of our body. So it's not just increase in muscle, it's increase in energy, aerobic fitness, cognitive function, mitochondrial health. It's really working at the cellular level, which I think is the kind of the newer learning. Like in the past, I think blood flow restriction training has been talked about just a strength gaining machine technique, and I mean, strength is huge, but there's all these other benefits. So blood flow restriction training, the way it works, you're wearing cuffs on your arms and legs. And the reason why it allows us to get these increase in strength that seems a little bit like, how is that? How does that even work? Or how is that possible? Essentially, we are slowing down oxygen into our muscles and slowing down venous blood flow from our muscles in order to increase metabolites in our muscles. That means like blood lactate is one of the big ones. Lactic acid, if we can get a high level of lactic acid, that sends a signal to our body that we're in high level of fatigue. The reason we're in fatigue with BFR is not because we're using a heavy load, it's because the lactate is being trapped in the muscle longer. So it's sending a much stronger signal to the pituitary gland, which is where your human growth hormone gets released from. So trapping that lactate acid in the muscle, even though we're under a light load, the response from our body is as if we were doing the hardest workout we could possibly do. And if you've ever done BFR, you know what it feels like. It's not necessarily easy. You feel a fairly intense fatigue or burn in your muscle, but it's different than heavy lifting. It's not stressing your overall body or your joints. It's just fatiguing your muscle in that moment. And that is where the response comes from. The benefits of increased human growth hormone, which are also the benefits of, let me share my screen again so you can see these notes. Um, Benefits of increased human growth hormone: weight loss, especially around the midsection, increase in muscle mass, increase in bone density, increased levels of energy and stamina. Also, lack of symptoms of depression. People report happier mood being on. This is for, so interesting enough, benefits of human growth hormone. A lot of this comes from people a lot of this research is when people supplement with human growth hormone. So if someone has a condition where they have low human growth hormone and they take a supplement, these are the benefits they're getting from that supplement of human growth hormone. So weight loss, muscle mass, bone density, energy, lack of depression, improved appearance and tightened skin. That's because, one, we're building muscle to tighten the skin, and two, human growth hormone helps all of our tissues, including tendon and skin. Improve sexual function. The interesting thing is, myself and the people that are doing my BFR program are experiencing these similar benefits: weight loss, increased muscle, bone density, energy. Um, Interesting, the lack of does depression or happier mood. Hard to know what that comes from. For me, I for sure experienced this, but part of this was like I felt confident again. I felt like I was in control of my health again. I felt energized after my workouts again instead of beaten down and in pain. So like I don't know if it's a hormonal thing or a mental thing, but I know a lot of other people I've talked to have experienced as similar, like they just feel better to, being on this. So is it the human growth hormone? Hard to parse that out, but there's definitely some benefits there. Shifting gears a little bit, I want to jump into why BFR in particular. So if you research or Google blood flow restriction training online, you will mostly see a lot of men and a lot of muscly, like bodybuilder with no shirts, very sweaty, bulging muscles doing BFR. And if you look at that, you're sort of like not sure that, a middle-aged woman that doesn't speak to you. It's not like, oh yeah, sign me up for that, right? But I have fallen in love with blood flow restriction training for women for many reasons. Keep in mind, I've been a trainer 30 years, so I've worked with a lot of clients, a lot of women prior to ever using BFR. And the struggle is so many women are encouraged in our society to focus on cardio, especially when we're younger. Cardio, we want to be lean, we want to burn fat, we don't want to bulk up. But when you hit midlife and your hormones change, cardio alone is not going to continue to get you the same results. And the reason for that is not only are our hormones changing, as our hormones change, we lose muscle. As we lose muscle, our metabolism slows down. Cardio will burn calories in that moment, but honestly, too much cardio will help lead to loss of muscle. And all of that leads to lower metabolism. And if you can improve your metabolism, that's going to burn more calories in a 24-hour period than just a 30-minute workout will burn. So, cardio is no longer the solution as we age. And so, if you're a woman who's done cardio most of your life and then you hit midlife and you yourself realize it or someone tells you, hey, you need to start doing strength training, if you don't have the experience of lifting heavy weights, it's pretty difficult to pick up later in life safely and effectively. There's a skill to it. You need to have proper form. It can be intimidating. Many women don't. I've heard women who are like, I tried to go heavy because everyone's telling me, but I've gotten injured. Now, I'm not saying heavy lifting. If those that know me from evolution, we do heavy lifting in evolution. I love it, but you need to be prepared for that. You need to have good background in training. You need to be coached through it. It's hard to just jump in. Where BFR is, let me see if I can scroll down here. BFR is great in that if you don't want to lift heavy or can't lift heavy safely, you don't need very much equipment. You can go very light. You don't need to be at the gym necessarily. Some people I love going to the gym, but some people, they would just rather be home in their own private space. The weights are light, so the injury risk is really low. The workouts, despite the name, I know blood flow restriction can sound intimidating, or the pictures online might look intimidating. The workouts are not intimidating because you're using lighter weight, lighter effort. Even though there is some fatigue and you do want to push yourself through that, it's not a super intimidating workout. And the workouts are super short. 20 minutes is all you really need. And actually, that's all you're supposed to do with the bands on. So really good solution for a lot of the obstacles that women come up against as they age. The you know difficulty with time. A lot of us are busy getting to the gym. A lot of us, if you haven't lifted heavy or if you have an injury that prevents you from lifting heavy, BFR is a great workout around. I know Cecily in the beginning was talking about having some arthritis. I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but when you have arthritis and you try to lift heavy, your arthritis gets irritated and then you're in more pain. And then you have to question the next time you work out, do I do that again to try to stay healthy, or do I avoid it knowing that I'm just going to get weaker? And that was the exact dilemma I was in with my hip. I was like, I can't push it. Do I push it and kind of pay for it, but do my best, or do I back off, but knowing I'm going to over time get weaker? It's a tough dilemma. And that's why I'm actually so passionate about this, because I feel like there needs to be this solution for women, because you could be in this kind of catch 22 point that can be very disheartening. One other thing I want to talk about, and this is kind of my last kind of phase of points, and then we'll go to Q&A, is just talking about generally women and muscle. I feel like there's a lot of women And it's not for women's fault. It's kind of a social thing, right? That we're held back from achieving our best health by fear of getting bulky. I have so many women that will tell me, I don't want to bulk up. I don't want to strengthen. I don't want to bulk up. And in a way, this is such a myth because honestly, most women will have a really hard time actually getting bulky. It's a hard thing to build muscle, especially as we age and especially for women. Now, that being said, there are body types, there are mesomorph, more muscular body types that if they lift consistently, they will bulk up. So let's talk about what happens if you lift and you end up getting bulky. Well, one good news is muscle loss is not hard, especially as we age. So take a week off and it'll go away, and then you can ratchet your training to the right level. It's funny, like it's this big fear, but it's like really what's going to happen? Oh, you think, oh, I'm looking too strong. First of all, like that's a bad thing. But if you do feel that way, it's like, oh, I'm just going to back off for a week and then adjust my workouts to maybe not go quite that hard. But I'm saying it in kind of a joking way, but I think it is an important thing because I do still hear that kind of obstacle for people. Just it's an emotional obstacle. And the other thing is, as we age, muscle is so much more than just how our body looks and the tone of our body or the muscles that we have. It's really so much more about our health because muscle helps with, well, skin tightness, which I know for me, I really liked that part of it, although that's maybe more of a vanity thing, but bone health, but our muscles responsible for that. The stronger our muscles are, the stronger our bones are going to be. The stronger our muscles are, the better metabolism and fat burning machine our body will be. The more energy we're going to have, the more independence we're going to have as we get older. We won't have to ask people to put our suitcase in the overhead bin for us. We can do it ourselves. And going farther with that, we can just be more independent long term as we age. And also, muscle is not just it is actually a huge part of our endocrine system, and it's responsible for our overall healthy metabolism and controlling blood sugar. So, muscle is where our body stores glucose. So, when we eat and our glucose elevates in our bloodstream, one of the first places our body wants to put that glucose is in our muscle. But if we're never exercising our type 2 muscle fiber, which is our stronger muscle that atrophies as we age, if we're never accessing that muscle, that glucose never gets used up. So the glucose in our muscle is full. So when we have glucose in our blood, it has to pass the muscle and go to our liver and other areas, our pancreas, that we don't want elevated glucose in. If we work out using our muscles and BFR really uses our type 2 muscle fibers, we clear some glucose out of those muscles. And then our blood has, when glucose is in our bloodstream, it can put it back in the muscle again. So muscle is a hugely important part of our endocrine system and managing our metabolism and managing our blood sugar. So don't just think about muscle as a look thing. It really is what runs our body at a more healthy level. So lastly, I want to talk about, and I'll stop sharing for a little bit. I want to talk about my company that I started a year ago. So first of all, those who don't know me, I've owned a gym for 20 years. I'm 54 years old and I have two kids under four. And I launched a new business last year. Not really needing to add something new to my plate. Not like I was like, woohoo, I want to start a new business, but I have become so passionate about this solution, partly because I had a really life-changing personal story with it and how much it helped me mentally and emotionally. And then I've had some amazing testimonials. I have a client who has a double knee replacement she's in her 70s, very healthy woman, otherwise vibrant, active, plays golf. She was crawling out of her bathtub because of fear of falling because she felt so unstable. And within 3 weeks of doing BFR, she no longer had to do that because she got a boost in human growth hormone, a boost in type 2 muscle fibers, and very quickly regained strength that she needed to feel stable. I had a client who had breast cancer and was on estrogen suppressants and was gaining weight despite all of her efforts. But with BFR, because when human growth hormone elevates, our metabolism increases, and we also are able to access our body fat in order to break down for energy. She was able to lose 22 pounds on BFR when she was not able to lose weight in any other workout before then. I have another woman who was in the hospital very sick, lost 10 pounds of muscle within 2 months doing BFR, gained 7 pounds of that muscle back in her 50s. Just story after story. And so that's why I have so much passion about growing this. And I'm not really here to try to sell people on it. I just want to let people know it's out there because I think most people have no idea what BFR is. Most people have no idea what is happening with their human growth hormone and how they can actually improve that as they age. And I'm just trying to open the dialogue and spread the word about this technique. My program is called Celly Strength, and the people that it's not for, if you're someone who's sort of a fitness enthusiast or fanatic, or maybe you're a trainer and you like to figure things out on your own, you can buy the bands, you can play with it, you can do your own workouts. That's great. If you're someone who has struggled to figure out how to fit exercise into your life and you need a lot of accountability or hand holding through that process because it can be hard to learn new habits, it can be hard, then you probably need more accountability in, maybe a one-on-one type of trainer, which is what I've done most of my career, right? But if you're someone who wants a fast track to results and work with someone who's really done a deep dive, heavy learning, and put together a program that's going to get you the results safely and as quickly as possible. And if you want expertise and you want someone you can actually talk to and ask questions of, working out from home 3 times a week for 20 minutes, and then also being a part of this like-minded community. We're a women-owned business that's focused on helping women live better lives and live age more healthily and active and increase our health span. And that's what we're passionate about. Then we'd love to work with you. So we're having a couple holiday specials, $100 off for the first month, and also a gift package if you want to buy a gift for someone. We're selling bands with the first month of coaching at $100 off. And whoops, I lost my earbud. And I'll send an email out about that afterwards if anyone has questions. I don't want to make this, too much of a focus on a sales pitch, but I just wanted to let you know that those options were out there. So I am going to pause there. I think we have one chat. Let's see. Do you know which chemical signal that the elevated tissue lactate sends to the pituitary that you described? Um, that's a good question, Wahida. I'm sure I do not know, and I will look that up. I've read a bunch of studies that talks about lactate in the muscle. When it's held in the muscle long enough, it will get into the bloodstream, and once you have elevated lactate in the blood, it circulates through the system, gets to the pituitary gland. But I don't know what the chemical signal is called. Good question. Oh, I think you're muted. Go ahead and unmute yourself. I would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I was wondering, I don't think it's the lactate itself that stimulates the pituitary. I was thinking that it's probably that it upregulates something at the mitochondrial level at the
Um,
locally, but I'm not sure.
could it be IGF-1?
Yeah, yeah, that could be it. Yeah.
Okay, because I know that it increases IGF-1 as well as VEGF and as well as VEGF is more for the vascular system, I believe. There's
So
one other
those,
I'm forgetting.
yeah, so those peptides probably are upregulated by the mitochondria locally, and then that might cause something with the
Yeah.
pituitary. I
Wahida
think.
is our physician on the line, if you couldn't tell, but that's an awesome question. Wahida, I would love to chat with you more about that. I have been doing a lot of
I'll
research and
find
looking
out
at
for
different
you.
articles.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be great because of course I'm all learning a lot of
Yumi
this too.
probably
But
knows, right?
Yumi probably knows.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
good
yeah,
point.
yeah.
But we do know there's a link in when lactate is increased, it will increase human growth hormone. And then lactate in itself is a powerful, it helps with brain health and muscle mass in and of itself. But through what pathways, I'm not exactly sure. I do know IGF-1, VEGF, and there's one other one that you see in all the research that consistently shows those are being increased through BFR training. And I'm glad you brought up the mitochondrial pathway because it's true. That is one of the things about human blood flow restriction is it actually causes mitochondrial biogenesis, which means we get more mitochondria, and the mitochondria we have get more efficient or healthier. And those are our energy cells of our body. They take the oxygen from our bloodstream and deliver it to our muscle for energy, part of the ATP system. And as our mitochondria get healthy, one of the big things I hear from people doing BFR is that they feel more energy. And I really think that's from our cellular level. We have a healthier, or we're getting oxygen to our muscles much easier with less effort. So normal activities become easier for the same heart rate. We're getting more oxygen into our muscles. So we don't have to work as hard to get the same amount of energy and output. So mitochondria is a big part of this too. Um, how do you measure HGH? So yeah, we haven't measured it, but yes, there's studies that have been done. It's in a lab. I think it is a blood test. I don't know. Wahida, do you know that answer? The how do you?
Traditionally, like if we had people with, you've heard of these gigantism, right? Or like when kids have deficiencies and they're given treatment, the way we follow it is not through human growth hormone measurement, but with IGF-1 levels.
Okay.
So that's really what you look for. Like if you think someone has, acromegaly or
Hmm.
so I think it's indirect. And then I suspect, Joanne, that you're asking because you're trying to see, okay, well, I want to see if my levels are low, and then I work out and if they're going up, right? I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that because the ranges are so big, it might still look normal and then it would still look normal, or there's like diurnal variation. So you check it at one time of the day, it might be different than another time of the day. So it's not that correlative yet. Like, we're working on these
Hmm.
technologies to get better ways of measuring um, hormones, but we're not quite there yet. Even with the female hormones, right? I've been thinking
Hmm.
about this a lot. I don't know if you want to hear this or not. I can talk later, but even with like the
Go
estrogen and
for it.
progesterone replacement, you know, I'm I'm thinking that there's a level of estrogen and progesterone that you feel like yourself. And I think that's like probably around the age of 40 that we should have all women. This is like a thought of mine. And I don't know if I have like all the recent new menopause books sitting on my bedside table, and I just haven't had time to get through it to see if anyone else has had this idea, but that we should measure the estrogen progesterone ratio when someone feels like themselves, like when they're 40, so that we
Hmm.
know how to guide therapy because it's so nuanced, right? Like some people feel
Hmm.
good with like higher levels of progesterone and lower levels of estrogen, and they feel like themselves. Like this is how I feel like Wahida. And then other people would need it totally different. And that's like the challenge for doctors and why we don't like treating it. Because like we have to keep moving one up and moving one down, but we don't have anyone where to compare it to. And I was thinking every woman around 40 should have these things measured for when they
Hmm.
feel like themselves, right? So that we can mimic this physiology
Yeah, because
to
right
cause.
now it's just going on the same kind of recommendation, and they treat symptoms often, but it is like a very similar recommendation there without any previous
Yeah, it's
data.
really
That's
nuanced, right?
that's
Like for like
yeah.
cholesterol levels, we have all these things we can measure, like ApoB and all these things that we can measure and then tweak things. Well, we don't really have that yet.
Hmm. Yeah,
But I think, I think we're getting there. And I
heading
think
in that direction.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the same thing, I mean, I think, okay, what human growth hormone level is normal for someone this age? Well, normal for this age doesn't mean we can't be better, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I kind of go off of results and like comparing the science with what I'm seeing in real life. Like, so there are some studies that show like the same low intensity exercise with BFR and without. BFR produces like 28 times the human growth hormone. I don't know exactly how they were measuring that in that study, but so pretty significant difference. But then if you look at what the benefits of human growth hormone and then you look at, how are you feeling? Are you gaining muscle? Are you feeling more energetic? Are you feeling, is it helping your mood? Bone density is a harder one to track, but if you do a DEXA scan over time, annually, or that would be something really interesting. I'd love more people to do that so we can get more anecdotal data until they start doing these more long-term studies. But um, that seems to be super promising because heavy loading is good for your bones if you can do that. And they say jump training is good for your bones, but a lot of people can't do that. And so BFR is another approach. It's doing it through your your metabolites and the hormones circulating through your blood versus the actual physical load. Now, maybe doing some of both is the optimal way, but if you can't do the high impact or heavy loading, then BFR gives a lot of promise for bone density, which prior to that hasn't really been available. Susan, you've been very patient. I see your hand up. Feel feel free to jump
Thank you.
in.
Sorry, and I'm walking while I'm
It's
talking.
all good.
Two things. I had one comment and one question. The comment was, as I think I've told you, Ashley, I swim in the ocean and about 3 days a week. And I'm I'm thinking this is BFR because there's really nothing else that I've changed, but my body can tolerate the cold differently. Which I was wondering, like I know we don't have any science, like, but I mean
Interesting.
anecdotally,
Yeah,
That
it's
is so
really
funny.
significant.
interesting.
That is so funny because as I was looking through the research, and when I put that, one of them was more tolerant to hot and cold, and I just didn't include it because I don't know, I was like, oh, that's not really what we're talking. But that's so funny you just said that. I've
Yeah.
never.
No,
So cool.
it's
That's so
like
cool.
I used to convulse coming out of the water for about 10 minutes. And my husband now is always like, are you cold? And I'm like, I'm freezing, but I'm not having that crazy, I can't control my nervous system
Ah,
reaction anymore, which is just interesting. So that's my
yeah, that
comment,
is
just kind of
interesting. That is
fun.
interesting.
And then my question is, I'm not really a scale person, and but I am curious. Like, I can't really tell if I'm building muscle. I certainly think I am. But what do you recommend? Is that like, should I rely on the DEXA and not on a scale? I know I've heard that. I don't think it's real.
So
Like muscle weighs
if
more than fat.
you're
Blah blah blah.
yeah, if you're using a scale, then I would combine that with measuring your waist.
Oh,
So if your weight stays the same, but your waist goes down, you've lost body fat. If your weight, goes up and your waist stays the same, you've probably put on. I mean, that kind of is the like, you know, shortcut way to do it. It's obviously not as accurate as doing a DEXA scan, but that can kind of at
okay,
least tell you what direction is going. And now it also depends. You might want to do waist and hips, depending, because
okay,
certain women carry body fat in different parts of their body. So maybe do waist and hips and weight, and then see how those.
okay.
Because waist and hips aren't going to get bigger typically with muscle. They'll get
Mm-hmm.
smaller by losing fat. But like if you're measuring your arms or your legs, that would be harder to determine, right? Because if you're gaining
Right.
muscle, you don't know what's muscle, what's fat. But
Okay.
I think it's a good habit. DEXA scans are not that expensive. And I think it's a good habit, maybe just
Yeah.
like an annual DEXA scan to check your bone density and your lean mass and body fat and just kind of see trends and kind of do some interventions and see how the trends change. The other thing is like doing strength tests. So not only should you build actual muscle, but you should get stronger. Muscle strength and muscle size are not exactly the same thing because there's a neurologic component, but they're very highly correlated. So if you do a push-up test, for example, and then you try the push-up test and you've done more push-ups, you more like most likely have gained some muscle.
Mm, great.
And for us, we use the InBody too. I don't know if you
Mhm.
have, yeah,
Yeah, actually,
to,
we have an in-body at Evolution, or if you can find an in-body, the in-body does your in-body doesn't do bone density, right? It's just lean mass
no,
and
right, right.
yeah, yeah. So the in-body is a good way to measure lean mass and fat mass. It is not quite as accurate as DEXA, but you can definitely see trends over time and if especially if you're consistent at when you do it and things like that. But the DEXA is going to give you the bone density, which is another measurement, but the in body can be more convenient if, like we have someone at the gym. I know a lot of, Wahita's the concierge doctor over is it Walnut Creek, Wahita, that you are?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so they have it in their office. So that's pretty common, a common thing to find.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. Nancy commented, so your workouts are usually 30 to 40 minutes with the bands on, including cardio. Yeah, you can do all that. What I would do is take a break between the strength and the cardio, like take the bands off for 3 to 5 minutes, get some water, walk around, just let everything kind of get full, like blood flow back in your body, and then put the bands back on to finish with your cardio. I wouldn't start with that in the beginning, obviously. It takes a while to ramp up, but once you feel like, oh, I'm feeling good and I can tolerate, you can play with that. If you do too much BFR, you will notice that you get kind of this fatigue, not even necessarily in your muscle, but just generally your whole body. Like I feel sleepy or I don't have any energy. You don't want to feel that way. You should feel sort of energized after BFR. The nitric oxide that gets released, the increase in blood flow, the human growth hormone, all should make you feel energized, or that's part of the mood, right? It's helping with the endorphins. It gives you almost that runner's high. You want that feeling, not the like, oh my God, I'm so exhausted after that workout. So that's one way to measure if the amount you're doing is appropriate.
Thanks, Ashley.
Um,
Yeah, that it really, that is how I feel. And I feel like I need to go walk the dog now in the hills. And I want to just comment on Susan's thing. I yesterday after my workout took a 5-minute solid cold shower because I feel really warm afterwards. And cold showers are supposed to be good for you. That cold thing.
yeah.
Anyway, just throwing that in there. It didn't hurt.
That's cool. That's cool. And Nancy also commented that along with her strength gain, she has gotten impressive flexibility. That's awesome. Squatting down to talk to toddlers. That's awesome, Nancy. Joanne does the cold plunge in evolution, and she's noticing an increased tolerance too. So yeah, maybe it's doing it more, and maybe it's the bands, or maybe it's some of both. Cecily, are varicose veins in the legs contraindications to BFR? High blood pressure that is controlled, and what do you think of osteogenic loading? Uh, okay, great questions, and I'm glad. So there are some contraindications to BFR, but they're pretty specific and they're mostly overcomable. So, for example, if you have high blood pressure, as long as it's being controlled through medication, you're fine. Over time, your blood pressure may naturally improve with BFR training. And I know some people that have gone off or reduced their blood pressure medication. Varicose veins, so BFR will actually help. Oh, I'm blanking on the word, but our venous,
insufficiency.
yeah, it helps with the venous sufficiency. Like it helps your veins become a little stronger and more contractile.
Right.
But if you have significant varicose veins to start with, I would just start light because that's a sign that your veins are not as contracting as we want them to be. They're a little bit looser, weaker. So I wouldn't just full on, challenge them to their, I would start gradually and just keep an eye on the varicose veins and then just gradually increase and it should be fine. I have a varicose vein in my calf, and I haven't noticed any change in that in doing BFR for a year and a half. I wouldn't say I have significant varicose veins, but I do have one that is pretty noticeable. And then let's see, osteogenic loading versus bar. Tell me what you mean by that.
So osteogenic loading, have you heard of OsteoStrong?
Calf.
They say 10 minutes a week or less, and you can improve your bone mineral density. So, like, I'm not sure about that. And I just wondered, I haven't looked into it, but just, do you know anything about, because my primary
Isn't that
interest
is that where
improving
they
my bone
focus on?
density.
Yeah, is that where they focus on isometric holds?
Probably. It's just
Yeah.
machines, and you do
I don't know enough about it. I've heard of it.
okay.
In my mind, I was like, can that really do it? Because from my understanding, without BFR, it's either quite heavy loading or impact that is going to be the best for bone.
Yeah.
Now, maybe an
Sounds too good.
isometric hold, as long as it's a lot of force, maybe we just want to put force through our bones if we're talking about mechanical loading. And then BFR is doing it, approaching up from the metabolites and getting circulation in our bloodstream for bone markers that turn over our bone faster, basically cellular turnover of bone. So it's a little different approach. I don't know enough about it to speak to it. But I know for arthritis and things like that, the doing the lighter approach is likely going to give you better response.
Mm.
Any other questions? I think I made it through all the chat comments. Right.
I have tons
Awesome.
of questions, but I've already asked more than half of the questions. I'll ask one more. So,
okay, let's go one more.
Okay,
great.
so when I do my DEXA scan, they're looking specifically at my hips and my spine. And I understand you're saying this is to help you at a cellular level. And so just want to confirm, I mean, the tourniquet thing is below my hip. it's not anywhere near my spine or my core. And I'm really not interested in, I don't need energy. I don't need to lose weight. It's like I'm interested in my bones.
Yep.
So
Great.
the theory, I would say, you said anecdotally, you've had women doing it who their scans improve, their bones
Correct.
get stronger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a good question about where the placement of the bands are. I hear a lot of people say that too, like, oh, is it only good for your arms and legs, but not your core muscles or your back? And because, I mean, your arms and legs will get fatigued faster. If you have all four bands on, you will feel other muscle groups get fatigued faster as well. But it's the human growth hormone and the other metabolites that are flowing through our blood that goes through all of our tissue. So it would get your bone in your hips and
Everywhere.
spine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are studies that show that growth hormone treatment helps osteoporosis. So indirectly, it's not a direct study to look at BFR
Right.
osteoporosis, but we know that BFR increases growth hormone. And so presumably, without having enough data, because we're starting out right now, whereas,
Right.
maybe 5 years from now we will have information about this, but we don't want your bones to continue to get worse all that time.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah, but I was saying to Ashley that the studies I've seen that look at these things with the response to the hormones, whether it be growth hormone or, these are studies in younger people. And as you get older, your ability to kind of convert the hormones
But
into something.
there have been studies on women that the human growth hormone increases.
Mhm.
Oh, that
I'm, yeah,
postmenopausal women.
Oh,
yeah.
postmenopausal women, for sure, for sure. I just
Oh,
found three of
okay.
them. Yeah, I just found three. So if you look
Yeah,
at,
well,
look up growth
since I'm
hormone,
postmenopausal, I can't remember these things. Hopefully BFR
Uh,
will help.
I know what
there
you
you go.
mean.
There you go.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I do think there needs to be more research in that area for sure with postmenopausal women, but with BFR in general, and to Wahida's point, like hormones are complicated and we're still, the science community is still learning about them. But with as much science as there is out there about BFR and how it relates to human growth hormone, and then the science is out there about human growth hormone and what it does to our body, I mean, all signs point to it being a
Right.
positive thing for you to
Right.
do. Um, so that's about as good as we can get right now. But that's why I'm excited about it, because I've seen so many results that are kind of in real life proving out what this kind of science link is kind of telling us.
Right.
And it's also about bone quality too, right? So some people, and fracture risk reduction. So the growth hormone,
Right.
the studies show that it increased growth hormone, the growth hormone helped the DEXA scores, which is sort of a measurement, but I don't know if you know about the TBS score. It's another score that you can get on your DEXA that you can ask your doctor about. The TBS scores, it's a measurement of bone quality, because sometimes people have pretty decent bone quality, but their T scores come out low for other reasons, right? And so it's not a great measure of fracture risk, but sometimes when you have the two together, it kind of gives you a better idea of, because our measurement for
That's
osteoporosis is sort of limited, because we don't really like we'd have to take a biopsy of the bone to really look at how strong the bone is, right? It's
mm.
an indirect measurement by the DEXA, which is sort of useful, but I think if
And that's super helpful. And the other thing I'll say, and Wahida, I'd be curious how you feel about this. If you build muscle, even if your bone doesn't build, let's say, but there's research that shows type 2 muscle will help to contribute to bone density. But if you build muscle, you have more protection. Let's say you fall.
Mm-hmm.
You are not just skin and bones, so to speak. If you have muscle, there is more protection to dissipate the force of the fall. So muscle will protect your bone in addition to hopefully increasing the bone density, having more just durability in your body.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Great
Very
questions. I
helpful. Thank you.
appreciate, I love the conversations. It always makes me feel good. Like people are engaged and curious. And, some of the questions I'm still learning all this stuff with you, but it's been a fun, It's been a fun thing to dive into and really learn more about. And Wahid, I really appreciate your questions and comments and would love
Oh,
to
I'm
chat at
happy
some
to.
point.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would love to too. Yeah, I still have to make that appointment with you.
Yeah,
With those
yeah, that's all right.
bandwidth, right?
I'm
Yeah.
glad you were here today. That was great. So,
Appreciate
all right, gang. Well, thanks so much. I'll send out an email with this recording. And if you have any questions or need anything, feel free to reach out. You'll know how to get a hold of me through the email. And thanks for being here.
Thanks,
Thank you
Ash.
so much.
All right,
Thanks.
guys.
you.
Bye.
Been
Thanks.
wonderful. Thanks.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Bye-bye.